I want residuals.
What's going on, Freak Nation? Thanks for hanging out with us on a Whip Ass Wednesday. A lot of folks whipping ass, some getting their ass whipped, some wishing that their ass was whipped, some still feeling an ass whipping over the weekend, and some still feeling a big old ass whipping after Monday night's football extravaganza between Richard C. Suave's Los Angeles Colts as opposed to the Los Angeles Rams. I have no idea.
Where did that come from? Huh.
There was a time when my buddy and I, Tucker, would go to Jacksonville, Florida, Jacksonville Beach. We went there for 10 years straight. Folks had a condo there, and it's when the Colts were threatening to leave Baltimore, and I remember WAPE AM 6 something.
Wait, you just said APE, so the ape?
The ape, the great ape welcomes the Jacksonville Colts. There were so many cities trying to get the Colts. Wow. Jacksonville of all people. Who would put an NFL team in Oops.
An expansion.
Yeah, I guess so. The great ape welcomes the Jacksonville Colts. What's up, Rich?
I'm in a good mood today.
Yeah. I could tell, man, by what you're wearing.
I decided to go all Suns today.
Yeah.
He's orange, man.
Yeah. Did you sleep in that? Did you sleep in that?
No, I didn't actually.
I like the way your left arm is folded. That's a good little crease.
No, it's caught on the mic. It's okay.
No, it's not. Look at what. There it is.
No, it's just. Oh, come on.
It's awesome. A little disheveled. It's okay. We're the Freak Nation.
It's a T-shirt, Kenny. Sleeves do that on T-shirts.
Happy to whip some ass today in the Freak Nation.
You're already whipping Richie's ass.
That's just why we call it a whipping ass Wednesday. Heard that Ron Franklin, former ESPN commentator, passed away recently. He's known for Big 12, college football, college basketball broadcast, and then, of course, a couple of disparaging comments to women during a production meeting. I think actually one was with Holly Rowe on air like in 2005, 2006. Great announcer, but certainly not privy to the times that we're in. I don't know if that's a whip ass.
No.
Right?
Anytime somebody dies, it's not a whip ass.
All right, well, let's get this thing back on track. Ricky in the Los Angeles Colts. Who's whipping some ass for you on a Wednesday, Broham? Anybody? Anybody in your circle?
Yes, I do. I watched a documentary last night.
Yeah.
And
by the way, Josh Weinfuss, Cardinals insider, joining us in about 10 minutes.
And it was great. And I just wanted to bring it up. And it goes right into our Whip Ass Wednesday theme.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Qualified.
Oh yeah.
Interesting. Looks like a prototype.
It was about Janet Guthrie.
Oh,
who was the
sweet.
First female to ever qualify for the Indianapolis 500. And I knew a little bit about her beforehand. And this documentary has been out for a couple of years. It's an ESPN 30 for 30, so you can go watch it on ESPN Plus. I finally got a chance to watch it yesterday, and it's terrific. And Janet's story is amazing. And it's just it's a shame. It's a shame. And I'd say the same thing about Willie T. Ribbs in a way, where he was just he had the bad circumstances of being the first.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But if they were such good drivers that if they showed up a little bit later, they would have been able to do great things. And Janet Guthrie is one of them. For example, Janet Guthrie broke her wrist 2 days before taking part in the Indy 500 because she was playing tennis. And she wheeled that damn Indy car into a top 10 finish in that Indy 500, beating Mario Andretti in that race with equipment that was okay, but not the greatest.
Right.
So I wanted to shout out Janet Guthrie today. She's amazing.
Well done.
Good Richie.
That is awesome. That is very, very cool. Yeah, her story is phenomenal. Way cool. We need to see that, Kenny.
Crasher,
for sure.
Elaborate just a little bit on her and really how she did whip ass. Richie's not understating what she did to qualify for the Indy 500. Her gear for qualifying was just this side of shit. And the ability to do what she did, I mean, just think about it back in the day, being a woman in that paddock.
Well, that was the 70s.
Mhm.
And then the year that I became heavily involved was 1992. And that's when Lynn St. James was coming around, and things had not changed much between the late 70s to the early 90s. And Lynn St. James was going through a lot of crap as well. So you could say that it still kind of exists. I mean, there's still a long way to go, which I can't believe I'm saying that in the year 2022. But Janet Guthrie was a no-holds-bar woman. She had an engineering genius mind. And when she put herself in those pits and she was able to not just walk the walk, but talk the talk, and that's what's so important in gearhead minds, that's kind of what made a few people take a second look like, wait a minute. Wait, if she's talking about certain loose conditions or how to tighten up the right rear, she's actually right. She's not saying it just to say it. So I think that's kind of what got her a little bit farther than Desiree Wilson. Desiree Wilson came right before her, and Desiree never qualified for the Indy 500. But maybe there was a little bit of barrier breakdown thanks to Desiree. And then when Janet came in, boom, engineering mind, people finally kind of started having some respect. But again, it was still no girls in the pits. I mean, wives were not in the pits at that time. It's ridiculous. So ridiculous.
And again, remind the Freak Nation Crasher, what year was that?
We're talking late 70s. So I think Desiree Wilson, I believe, was 76, 75, 76. And then Janet came on the scene in 77 or 76, 77. Yeah.
Women were not allowed in the pits.
Oh, no. Mm-mm. And you can thank Betty Rutherford, the late Betty Rutherford, Johnny Rutherford's wife, for finally having enough of that nonsense and starting to make the push for, hey, there's no difference between you and me except for some boobs and something else between your legs. Come on. I know what I'm talking about. Betty Rutherford, another pretty good engineering mind. And so, yeah. Whew, I just can't believe that this has all happened in my lifetime. That's crazy.
How, Richie, does that sound like to you, being a millennial, hearing Crasher talk about women not being allowed in the pits of an automotive race in the 70s? Does that sound like me talking about when the first car came out in the early 1900s? Is it that bad? That old sounding?
It might as well be, right? Like it doesn't even seem that long ago. It's that's still less than 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is insane, and it feels like just yesterday. And so yeah, it was wild. And they played some, she raced in NASCAR too, Janet Guthrie did, and they were playing some clips of old races in NASCAR and talking to some of these NASCAR personalities, and just the things they were saying about it were just I'm just like, oh my god, like these it was awful. And like, just for example of what she was going through, the first ever IndyCar race that she took place in actually happened not too far from me at Phoenix Raceway.
Yep.
And it was cool to see that video and how much that track has changed in the 45 years or whatever. It literally looked like they were racing in a desert lot. Like, that's how crazy how much change has come to that racetrack. But she got black flagged in that race because she was running so slow. Partially because it was her first IndyCar race, partially because of the equipment. She got called down pit road, and the official who was came up to her was like, "Hey, are you feeling tired? Is that why you're not running fast enough?" I'm just like, oh.
Are you feeling tired?
Yeah.
He wasn't insinuating anything, was he? Like, is it that time of the month?
It probably was, to be honest.
How did she respond?
She was basically like, "F you, I'm gonna keep driving."
Yeah. Okay. So she went back out there, even though she was a little bit slower.
I think so. I'm pretty sure she did. Okay. Yeah.
Huh. Are you tired? Oh,
well, I will say this, Richie, like minds, my friend, and I'm gonna let Crasher describe this. This picture, Crasher.
Oh, yay! Oh my gosh. There you go. Whipping ass Wednesday. Kaylee Bryson became the first woman in the 36 years of running the Chili Bowl Sprint Car Midget Nationals to qualify for the A Main, the championship race on the big Saturday night. There she is. That's right after she qualified. Yep. Another badass woman. So, okay. So we're talking late 70s for the first woman to ever get into the Indy 500. You would think, okay, well, that opens doors. So the 80s, more opportunities come. The 90s, more opportunities come. Nope. And nope. The early 2000s, oh, hey, Danica Patrick got a lot of crap from people in the early 2000s. So here we are, 2022, and Kaylee Bryson finally breaks a barrier in sprint cars, midgets. Holy cow, why does this much time have to go through? It's on Monday. Obviously, we celebrated the birth and the legacy of Martin Luther King. That was Martin Luther King Day. Somebody put a picture up on Twitter and said, honoring Martin Luther King with this picture in color. And I colored it because we need to remember that this was not that long ago. And I thought, ooh, yeah, good point. Because we see all the pictures in black and white and we think, oh my gosh, how long ago was that? It wasn't that long ago. 50, 60 years. That's it. Ridiculous.
Janet Guthrie, Kaylee Bryson whipping ass. That moment right there is so significant. And I will say this, when she was introduced with all the other drivers prior to our cat biting plugs and knocking out the power on Crash's light.
That was pretty funny.
Omar. Kyle Larson and it might have just been Kyle Larson that her applause rivaled Kyle Larson.
Yeah.
And this guy's a NASCAR Cup champion, beloved by many. But when she was announced, it was so heartwarming to hear people go bonkers for a woman, not just NASCAR, IndyCar, but a very, very heavily dominated white male sport of sprint car racing in Tulsa, Oklahoma. People going bonkers, Crasher, for the lone female, the first female ever to make it to the final, the A main in the Midget Nationals, Chili Bowl, Lucas Oil Nationals there in Tulsa, Crasher, with the Chili Bowl.
In the year 2022. Yeah. And still, there were maybe a total, can we count on one hand, maybe a digit or two over one hand, how many girls were trying to attempt to make the race? So still, there's not a lot of opportunities out there. Again, archaic, but come on, women, just keep going. Just keep going.
Women are whipping some freaking ass, man.
Yes.
Love to see that. Yes, they are.
My whip ass is not a woman. Thank you two for putting it up there as being a woman on this Woman Wednesday. Mine, though, is related to who we're going to talk to next. Of course, we're going to talk to Josh Weinfuss, who covers the Arizona Cardinals. My whipping ass is Budda Baker, because he took a nasty head hit on the field on Monday night's game. And the picture that he posted on Instagram on the plane on the way back home with this huge smile on his face, I thought, yeah, that's badass. Good for him. I hope he doesn't have any lingering effects over the next month or two, which he probably will, but I hope it doesn't really affect him too much because, that was scary. That was a scary hit. It wasn't just the helmet-to-helmet hit that he took. It's when he went down, his head bent in a very odd position before his body flipped over on the turf with him. And I thought, it was just, it was awful. So it was great to see him bounce back.
One of the positives that came out of that, Crasher, is you realize that not Chandler Jones, not J.J. Watt, that's the leader of the defense. Budda Baker is the leader. And I'm not saying anything new that Cardinals fans, you already knew this, but
I don't think a lot of people around the country knew, though.
Right. The importance of Budda Baker to that team, he is the energy. He's the electricity to that team. Granted, he couldn't save a piss-poor performance by the majority of the team, but after that injury, the concern and love shared on social media about that one individual, not just from, again, Cardinals fans, but people across the planet that were watching that game. Freak Nation, his name is Josh Weinfuss, ESPN, ESPN.com. Josh Weinfuss, Cardinals insider. Where in the hell do we go from here, Cardinals fans? A lot of questions to be asked and are being asked. Not sure if the Cardinals have all the answers. He joins us next. Freak Nation.
Saddle up, lock and load.
Let's move these people out!
Northwest Insurrection, rated PG. December 11th, only in theaters.
We'll get back to the video interview in just a moment, but with high gas prices holding steady, it might be time for you to check out Lucas Oil Fuel Treatment and Injector Cleaner. It increases power, fuel mileage. It's formulated for both gasoline and diesel engines, carbureted, of course, fuel injected. Are you kidding me? It's like a tune-up in a bottle. Just add it to every fill-up of that snappy car of yours. And of course, it's as simple as... You get it. Now, back to the interview.
I want residuals.
Whip Ass Wednesday here in the Freak Nation, and as promised, Josh Weinfuss joins us here in the Freak Nation. Josh, you whipping some ass today, buddy?
I'm trying. I'm dragging ass is what I'm doing.
Postseason blues.
It was an early morning Tuesday. It was a late night Monday night.
Right.
And then early morning, had like a 6 a.m. flight out of LA back to Phoenix. So it's been a rough couple of days.
First world problems for Josh Weinfuss, Freak Nation.
Yeah, very first world problems.
Right. Cardinals insider Josh Weinfuss joining us here in the Freak Nation. And knowing that this is an international extravaganza with the Freak Nation, we still localize quite a bit. And still some talk going on with the Cardinals. And so many Monday morning quarterbacks out there, and Richie's one of them. I'm one of them. Crash.
Yes,
and I don't necessarily want to go there as far as what we said. Yeah, we told you this is going to happen. But Josh Weinfuss, now that you've had a chance to somewhat sleep on it, have you been able to deduce what the hell happened outside of the obvious? Is there anything in particular that happened Monday night against the Rams that maybe we aren't privy to such a decimation of a team that at one time was headed for the Super Bowl?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, they got punched in the face very hard, very early in that game, and they couldn't get off the mat. And the Rams just kept knocking them. Anytime they pick their head up, they knock them back down. I mean, it was an absolute bloodbath, and there's nothing behind the scenes to it. I mean, they got, for the lack of a better term, they got their asses kicked. And there's, I mean, and I don't say that lightly. Like it was ugly all around. And the Cardinals couldn't find offensive rhythm. They couldn't stop the running game on defense. I mean, everything that we've seen over the last 10 games kept, continued in the worst possible time. Now, I'll be honest. I honestly thought that was not going to happen. I thought that this was the game that the Cardinals were going to go back to their old ways. I thought this was a game that they had got everyone healthy back for, everyone was healthy for, that they were planning on. I mean, they had basically planned Chase Edmonds' return for this game. I just thought it was one game, everything would come together. That wasn't the case. The Rams came out there, punched them straight in the teeth, and they did not let up after that.
And of course, people want to point fingers as to whose fault it was. I mean, there's a lot of blame that can go around, but of course, Cliff Kingsbury is taking the biggest, I guess, point, or people are going in his direction more often than not. Your thoughts on what the team may do, should do with the coaching position, the head coaching position?
I think they're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
There is a small part of me, like a very small part of me, that says they might move on, because I do know that there are some options out there that the team has liked in the past. But I don't think anything will happen. I mean, you have to give him some credit, right? That he inherited a 3-win team, He got them to 5 wins, got them to 8 wins, got to 11 wins, and got them to the playoffs. But like I wrote yesterday, are we seeing Kliff Kingsbury hitting his ceiling as an NFL head coach? Because he's taken them so far, but he can't get them over that hump. And we're seeing these late season collapses. I mean, it's happened in all 9 years he's been a head coach, going back to Texas Tech. At some point, as an organization, you're going to have to sit there and say, when does that change? And how many more years are we going to give him the opportunity to change that? And if it doesn't change, like, what if they go 2 more years and it's the same stuff? They're going to be kicking themselves for not parting ways with him now and find someone who can get them to that, that next level. I compare it a lot to what happened with the Chicago Bulls in the late 80s. You had Doug Collins coaching them, and in '89 he gets them to the NBA or Eastern Conference Finals. They can't beat the Pistons. They fire him, bring in a guy named Phil Jackson, and the rest is history. Like, maybe that's what this team needs. Maybe Kliff Kingsbury has taken them as far as he can. I don't know.
Who are the other options out there, and how would they? And let's just play, whatever scenario we want to play right now. How would they mesh with this team? What would make them better?
I think, let's say, for the sake of hypotheticals, they do fire Kliff Kingsbury this week. I think their first call is to Brian Flores. And I think the thing with Flores is, I'm sure he's learned a lot about how to deal with management in Miami, but he's going to have to come with a incredible offensive coordinator who can get the most out of Kyler Murray. He can handle the defense. He can be that CEO that they need, but he needs in order for him to get, the job, I think, in my opinion, would be all but his. He would need to come with an offensive coordinator that can take Kyler Murray from, who he is now, a Pro Bowler, potential MVP candidate, to an MVP guy who can take a team to a deep playoff run.
Let's go extremely wicked. Why not Brian Flores and keep Kingsbury on as offensive coordinator? I know that would be embarrassing, but at the same time, it's his strength.
It is. It wouldn't put it past me to see that option on the table, from the Cardinals standpoint. Like, I think that would be something they would think about. But if I'm Kliff Kingsbury, I don't take a demotion, right? I mean, I don't think anybody would take that demotion,
right?
And that's exactly what it is. You're telling him you're not good enough to be an NFL head coach, but you're good enough to be an NFL offensive coordinator, and that's not happening at the same place. Like, he will go somewhere else and be an offensive coordinator before he takes a demotion with the Cardinals.
Josh Weinfuss joining us here in the Freak Nation. Suave, go right ahead, bud.
Yeah, thank you. So Kyler Murray, that's the next step here. Dude looks scared on Monday. Did he not? He did not look like he was ready for the occasion whatsoever. My favorite of that being a very similar play to what we saw several weeks ago in the end zone, where he was like, I don't know what to do here. So I'm taking a sack, and he throws the pick six. That's the ball game right there. So what does Kyler Murray have to do to figure out how to be a leader of this football team? Because right now he's not doing it.
That's a good question. I think we need to see him be more demonstrative on the field, right? He needs to start being that leader from a body language standpoint, a verbal standpoint on the field. I think he's doing some of it off the field, but that needs to start translating onto the field. I always compare him in my head to Carson Palmer. Granted, they were very different stages of their career, but Carson, he led, right? He was that leader on the field, and we're not seeing that yet from Kyler Murray. Did he play scared? I don't know if he necessarily played scared. I think he was running for his life the whole game, and that changed the whole complexion. And that's an offensive line thing. That's a blocking thing, right? You know who's on this Rams front seven. You need to go above and beyond what you would normally do to make sure Aaron Donald's blocked every single play and Von Miller's blocked every single play. When they're getting by Max Garcia and Kelvin Beachum on a regular basis and DJ Humphries, Kyler doesn't have time to do anything. All of a sudden, he's scrambling. That obviously was an ill-advised underhand throw. He said after the game, he was looking back on it, he would rather have taken the sack, but he doesn't know it's going to get. He's going to be pick six, right? So he was trying to get the ball out of the end zone. But I just think they didn't look prepared. All week we heard, how are you not ready for the playoffs? Of course we're going to be ready for the playoffs. They weren't ready for the playoffs. Like, it's mind-blowing when you think about it. Like, they look as ill-prepared as you could possibly be for the biggest games of Kyler's career so far, of Kliff's career so far, of all 31 players who hadn't made the playoffs career so far. Like, It was shocking to me at how just there was no energy, there was no sense of urgency. There was just they were not ready, and Kyler might have been overwhelmed by the moment. This team doesn't perform well on prime time, but I mean, beyond that, like, to me, the biggest question is why weren't you ready? Why wasn't this team as prepared as it can be? And that doesn't matter who is responsible. The buck stops at the head coach. And I think questions, Kliff did a better job of answering some of those questions, but we may never know why this team wasn't completely prepared like they should have been for a playoff.
Josh, we've talked plenty about the offense, and we still have a lot of questions about that. It's out there. I'm not a fan of the ownership. Ownership's going nowhere. I'm not a fan of Steve Keim, what he's done, the whole Kliff Kingsbury. The two issues that I heard from my Big 12 friends were one, he never could finish a game. And two, you look at the Big 12 games. The Big 12 games were stacked at the tail end. That's just what happens in Big 12 football. You play the tougher games at the tail end of the season. So I don't need to run through that too much. But look at the defense. Remember kicking off the season how we were talking about Jordan Hicks going to another team? Isaiah Simmons, he is not an inside linebacker. I'm sorry. Zaven Collins, I know he's a rookie, but look at these last two draft picks for the Cardinals. They were freaking no-shows, my friend. What the hell do we do about that?
You're not wrong, Kenny. Where were they on Monday night? You had Zaven Collins splitting time, with a guy who was a backup. I mean, career backup in Tanner Vallejo. I mean, he's a great special teamer, but I mean, it's not a knock on him. He's just a backup. And then you had Isaiah Simmons not really playing all that well. It's just you put all that draft capital into two back-to-back inside linebackers, which is kind of mind-blowing to begin with, and yet you still have Jordan Hicks as your primary starting inside linebacker. It shows so much more about Jordan Hicks. I mean, this guy took all this, I don't want to say pressure, but all this.
It was heat, Josh. It was heat.
It was heat.
It was.
You know what? Screw it. I'm going to make the most out of this. And he did. Right? I mean, that dude deserves all the credit in the world for what he went through and then how he came out of it. But I mean, if we're going to sit and really break this down, I mean, obviously you have to look at Steve Keim's history of first-round picks. This happened again, right? I mean, you had Zaven Collins, who's supposed to be the end-all, be-all inside linebacker. This kid's so smart. This kid's so talented. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe going to Toledo didn't prepare him for the NFL. Just like we saw going to UMass didn't prepare Andy Isabella for the NFL. So maybe there is some sort of correlation between, these guys who aren't playing big-time college football not being overly prepared for the NFL. I mean, the flip side of that is we see it happen all the time. We see it happen around the league where guys go to smaller schools and play well. So maybe it's something the Cardinals are doing. Maybe they're not preparing them enough during training camp and rookie mini camp and OTAs and other mini camps. Like maybe they're not doing their part to get them ready for the NFL. I don't know, but to put that much draft capital into two inside linebackers and have the incumbent starter start all season is kind of like, what are you doing? Like that could have been the difference between getting a receiver or a running back or an offensive lineman that could have got them to the second round of the playoffs.
Well, whether it's not preparing them appropriately or not vetting them appropriately enough before the draft, again, what we just talked about falls back on Steve Keim. But again, he's not going anywhere. So how can fans feel confident moving forward? I mean, it's such a gut punch what happened on Monday. And then it's like, oh, but at least we have the draft. Oh, crap. Keim's in charge.
I think the only, this is kind of messed up, but like, does this team just continually add 1 or 2 or 3 more wins every year until they're 17-0 in like 4 or 5 years?
Still go out in the first round,
right? It's still go in the first round. Like, it's like you see this progress. But if I'm a fan, I'm like, sure, they're winning more and they have a great first half of the season, but I want them to go 4-5 in the first 9 games, and then I want them to finish 8-0.
And learn what those 5 losses were, or how do those happen? Yeah.
I mean, the narrative around Cliff Kingsbury would be totally different if he struggled early and won late.
Mm-hmm.
But, and people are trying to tell me, like, I had some guy on Twitter like, oh, they finished 11-5. That was a great season. I'm like, it doesn't matter what the record was. It's how you finish. It's not how you start.
You remember Bruce Arians' first year? What happened with Bruce Arians?
They went 4-4.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then missed the playoffs, at 10-6 or something, right?
Yeah. And then he came back in 11. And they went, what? Were they 7-0 or 9-0 to start the 14th season?
Yeah.
And then they ended up 11-5. 11-5, 16 games. Yeah, 16 games. Yeah. And then they went 13-3 the next year. I mean, you want to see that improvement, but you also need to see teams get better and stronger as seasons go on. And Cliff Kingsbury's teams just don't, right? Mm-hmm. And then, but here's the thing: his history isn't just, steeped in not finishing season strong. It's steeped in having penalty riddled teams. He was among the top. Texas Tech was among the most penalized teams in the country, not just the Big 12, the country under Cliff Kingsbury. So if we take a step back and we look at this from a 35,000-foot view, the answer is Cliff Kingsbury's teams are not very disciplined. That's what it comes down to. And that's penalties, that's and that's kind of where the second half issues have really come from. A lot of self-inflicted mistakes. And that comes from self-discipline. They don't have it. They just don't have the type of discipline that great teams, that championship teams have.
But see, there's where I just have this weird way of thinking about things, because it's like, I know Chandler Jones is disciplined. I know J.J. Watt has self-discipline.
Individually they are, but as a team they're not.
I don't understand how these big boys who know how to play the game, who know what makes a penalty, how all together they can suddenly, because of a certain coaching scheme, just go to crap.
I don't necessarily think it's a coaching scheme. I think it's probably all the other things. It's maybe they don't spend as much time working on something, or they, someone on Twitter brought up yesterday. It was actually kind of a good point. They were like, he eases up his practices as the season goes on to save their legs. So maybe that's something, right? Like, it's not necessarily the X's and O's. It's kind of everything that goes with it, goes around that either isn't consistent or just isn't up to par throughout the whole year.
Josh Winefuss here in the Freak Nation, and it's got to be frustrating for a lot of Cardinals fans out there. But then again, the Kool-Aid never seems to run out. Nothing's shown me that there's going to be anything different than this time next year. Nothing's changed. Nothing's freaking changed. So the frustration is up at a level that, again, I don't understand why the blowback hasn't forced somebody to make a change, buddy.
Here's what could change.
Okay.
If they have this team, or a team similar to this, they have a healthy DeAndre Hopkins, I think that changes things. I think losing him was such a major blow to this offense, because let's get into the X's and O's for a second. He's your isolated receiver on one side of Kyler Murray. You had three guys on the other side, right? Mm-hmm. The defense would have to go and figure out what they're going to do with this guy, leaving these three guys single covered. Well, you take him out of the equation and you put in some other guy here. Well, they don't need to worry about a DeAndre Hopkins. They have to worry about whoever, right? What was his name? Antoine Wesley, right? He doesn't scare defensive coordinators like DeAndre Hopkins does. And that changed everything, right? Everything. Because now you have AJ Green double covered. You have, teams rolling all their coverages to the other side, and that just Cliff did not adapt. He didn't adapt last year when teams figured out what he was doing, and he didn't adapt this year. That falls on him. That doesn't fall on him. What Kyler can do, he can change the play line of scrimmage all he wants. But if a defense knows that these are the two or three guys you're going to every single play, it does make it hard for any quarterback to get plays, to make plays. It really does.
Well, you look at the wide receivers that were drafted ahead of your buddy Zaven Collins. Maybe they could have helped out a little bit, but
let's go back. You take Andy Isabella ahead of DK Metcalf.
Still my favorite moment in Cardinals history. Yeah. I think me, Kenny, and Crash will never forget where we were when that happened.
I mean, imagine how good this offense would be if you had DeAndre, AJ Green, Christian Kirk and DK Metcalf.
But if they had DK, I don't think they would have gone after DeAndre.
Oh, 100% they would have.
Yeah.
Because Bill O'Brien was dumb enough to still make that trade.
Exactly.
Give away David Johnson and get DeAndre Hopkins. I don't care who is on your team. You do that trade.
No.
This is wild to me that Kliff can only be successful. And I don't think I'm out of line saying this based on how this team performed. If all the guys are healthy. It's the NFL. Like, that's not gonna happen. So if you take one of those guys out of the equation, your team's not going to be successful long term.
Right.
That doesn't add up to me.
Listen, Cardinals losses, a lot of teams wins, and I'll say the 2020 draft, CeeDee Lamb sitting there. Oh, Dallas, you didn't need that cornerback after all. Oh, but Isaiah Simmons went to the Cardinals, 7 or 8 picks earlier?
Hey, how are those Cowboys doing right now?
They can suck it.
But here's the thing. Like, Kyler explicitly asked for CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
And these quarterbacks, they know.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they need. They know who they need. They know why they need them. Teams need to start listening to these guys more.
Hey, Josh, between you and me.
And everybody listening.
Yeah. Kenny, you Cowboys homer. You Texas Longhorns homer. Jerry Jones stinks as an owner, too.
Yeah.
Sarkisian blows. I don't. Just be. These people that act like there's nothing wrong with the Cardinals, there's a crap ton wrong with the Cardinals.
But they want to come at you.
Yeah, well, can you use Cowboys
old
homer?
takes and
What do you expect?
yeah.
What do you expect?
I would pay the bus fare for Mike McCarthy to head to Arizona. Are you kidding me? I'm not saying.
It would be interesting to see an experienced coach who has, how do I say this? An experienced coach with quarterbacks, I guess, if that even makes sense, work with Kyler.
Yeah.
Whether it's, Mike McCarthy could be interesting. I think, I cannot think this morning. Former Lions coach who got fired before Patricia.
Oh, geez. Now we're going back a couple of layers there.
What's his name?
Yeah, him.
Wayne Fonts. No, I'm joking.
Get out of here. You're so old. Why can't I think of his name? But the coach that Matt Patricia, that the Lions fired, he'd be great. Great to work with Kyler. Does he want to come back and offer the coordinator? I don't know. But if you hire, let's say you were to part ways, hypothetically speaking, so you fire Kliff, and then you bring in Brian Flores as your head coach, and then why can't I think of his name? He worked in Indy too.
Worked for the Colts. What's his name?
Worked for the Colts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jim Caldwell.
Yes.
Yeah, Jim Caldwell.
Oh.
Jim Caldwell. I think he would be a great addition to the staff if they were to move on from Kliff.
Steve Sarkisian. I'll pay that bus fare.
Stop it. I think
Kenny.
Arizona is done with Big 12 right now.
Chip Kelly.
I just love that stat.
Here's a funny Chip Kelly story. I was in Manhattan Beach on Sunday night, and I'm walking down the street to a bar, and there's Chip Kelly just chilling, walking down the street. And we're just like, I was with a coworker, and we're just kind of like, that guy looked really familiar. And like, that's Chip Kelly. It was Chip Kelly just hanging out.
Were you at Sharky's?
No, we went to some brewery.
I saw the Cardinals fan group was heading to Sharky's on Sunday night. So that's what I was wondering.
Not there.
Good. Okay.
Again, one of my favorite stats is Kliff Kingsbury's record with Patrick Mahomes.
But here's the thing: like, everyone loves to give it. I will defend Kliff in this standpoint. You're at Texas Tech. You are getting 2- and 3-star athletes because look who else in that state. Look who else in that region. Like, you're getting the leftovers at Texas Tech. And he hated recruiting. and their defenses were terrible. Like, you could have put Joe Montana in the 80s out there, and you weren't going to win a Big 12 title. Let's be real. Joe Montana. That was the first thing that came to my head. That's terrible.
Wayne Fonts.
That's terrible.
Right. Well, I feel for cats like yourself, man. And a good buddy of mine, Gavin Spittle, who's the program director with 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, the home of the Dallas Cowboys. You want to cover a team that just goes deep and gives you a chance to provide some legs for your commentary. And damn it, Josh. Sorry, buddy.
Here's the flip side.
Uh-oh.
I'm going on paternity leave pretty soon, so I'm okay with, like, personally. I was fine with the run. We all had all my plans for the Super Bowl ready because I really thought the team was going to go, but there's always the other side, and that is I get to spend more time with my my infant son, so we're good with that.
Yeah.
So you could take maternity leave after the child was born.
You have 1 year from the day they're born to take it.
Badass.
Yeah.
Well, if you think
You're
about it,
You're Dad's not taking it before, Kenny.
yeah, no.
That'd be weird. I'm not gonna sit at home and do nothing.
Yeah, I'm getting geeked up from the birth of my child for 6 weeks.
I'd golf every day for 8 weeks if that was the case.
Right.
Honey, hope you're feeling well.
Yeah. What do you need next? Need more ice cream? Like more Oreos, more pickles? Like, what are you gonna do for 8 weeks before the kid's born, Kenny?
Josh, as always, buddy, appreciate your time. Thank you, man.
I always enjoy it.
All right, see you, bud.
See ya.
He says reluctantly. He says reluctantly.
All right, Freak Nation, thanks for being a part of this big old whip-ass Wednesday. Later.
I want residuals.